June 28th, 1914. A warm summer morning in Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia. The sun glowed softly over the red-tiled rooftops, and the Miljacka River shimmered like a ribbon of gold. People filled the narrow streets, waving small flags and craning their necks to see the royal procession. Excitement and tension hung in the air like static. That day, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, arrived with his beloved wife, Duchess Sophie. They had come for a goodwill visit, to show unity between the empire and the province of Bosnia, which Austria had annexed just a few years earlier. But beneath the surface, resentment simmered. Many Serbs saw Austria-Hungary as an oppressor that had stolen Slavic land, and some of them had sworn to fight back, even if it meant blood. Hidden among the cheering crowd that morning were 6 men, young, restless, consumed by nationalism. Members of a secret Serbian organization known as the Black Hand. They believed violence was the only language tyrants understood. Their goal was simple, but unthinkable: assassinate the Archduke. They had smuggled weapons across the border: pistols, bombs, cyanide capsules. Each of them knew they might not survive the day. Among them was Gavrilo Princip, a frail 19-year-old student from a small village in Bosnia. He had grown up poor, quiet, thoughtful, but filled with rage at what he saw as foreign occupation. For him, this was not murder, it was liberation. As the royal couple's motorcade rolled into Sarajevo, the atmosphere was electric. Franz Ferdinand wore his blue military uniform, medals gleaming in the sunlight. Beside him sat Sophie, smiling, her white dress a symbol of grace and serenity. She had begged to accompany her husband that day, despite warnings it might be dangerous. She said, "They won't hurt me. I am a mother, not a threat." The first stretch of the route went smoothly. People applauded. Children waved flowers. But then, as the cars reached the riverbank, one of the conspirators, Nedjelek Chabrinovich, stepped forward. His hands shook as he pulled the pin from his grenade and hurled it toward the Archduke's car. The bomb struck the folded-down roof, bounced off, and exploded beneath the next vehicle. Screams tore through the air. Soldiers rushed in. Smoke filled the street, and shards of metal tore into nearby bystanders. 2 officers were gravely injured. The Archduke's car sped away, narrowly escaping the blast. Chabrinovich swallowed his cyanide capsule and jumped into the river to avoid capture. But fate had a sense of irony. The poison was old and weak, and the river was barely knee-deep. He was dragged out, vomiting, and arrested on the spot. Meanwhile, Franz Ferdinand, visibly shaken but unhurt, ordered the convoy to continue. His pride was wounded, but his duty was clear. He wanted to visit the injured men in the hospital before leaving the city. Sophie begged him to go back to safety, but he refused. "It's our responsibility," he told her. Unbeknownst to him, this decision would lead him directly into the path of his killer. The royal couple's car set out again around 10:45 a.m. The driver, unfamiliar with the streets of Sarajevo, took a wrong turn onto a narrow street called Franz Josef Street. When an officer shouted that they were going the wrong way, the driver hit the brakes and began to reverse. The car stalled, and standing just a few feet away, in front of a small cafe, was Gavrilo Princip. Princip had been wandering the city in despair, believing the mission had failed. He stopped to buy a sandwich, his heart heavy, his purpose lost. Then, as he looked up, He saw the Archduke's car, stopped right in front of him, as if history itself had turned to face him. For a few seconds, the world went silent. Princip stepped forward. His hand trembled slightly as he drew his pistol, an FN Waddle 1910. He took aim at point-blank range. 2 shots rang out. The first bullet struck Duchess Sophie in the abdomen. The second pierced Franz Ferdinand's neck. The Archduke gasped, clutching his chest. Blood soaked through his jacket. He turned toward his wife and whispered, barely audibly, "Sophie, don't die. Stay alive for our children." But she was already slipping away. Within minutes, both were gone. The driver sped toward the governor's residence. The Archduke slumped against Sophie's dead body. When they arrived, a doctor could only whisper, "It's over." The royal couple lay side by side, their faces pale, their hands still touching. Back on the street, chaos reigned. Princip was seized and nearly lynched by the mob before soldiers dragged him away. He was calm, almost detached. When questioned, he said he did it for the freedom of his people. He was too young to be executed, so he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. He would die of tuberculosis only a few years later, his body wasting away, but his actions would echo through history. The shock of the assassination rippled across Europe like a thunderclap. In Vienna, the Austro-Hungarian Empire seethed with rage. Officials blamed Serbia, claiming the government had conspired with the assassins. In Berlin, Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany pledged his full support to Austria, assuring them of a blank check. In Russia, Tsar Nicholas vowed to defend Serbia, bound by Slavic brotherhood. France and Britain, tied to Russia through alliances, were drawn in soon after. In just 1 month, diplomacy crumbled, telegrams turned into threats, and the dominoes of war began to fall. By late July, Austria declared war on Serbia. Russia mobilized. Germany declared war on Russia. France joined the fight. And when German troops invaded neutral Belgium, Britain entered the war. By August 1914, Europe was engulfed in flames. Millions of men marched off with songs of glory on their lips, believing the war would be over by Christmas. They couldn't have imagined the nightmare to come. The mud, the trenches, the gas, the endless death. By the end of World War I, more than 16 million people were dead. 4 great empires, the Austro-Hungarian, the Russian, the Ottoman, and the German, had collapsed, and the world had changed forever. All of it from one moment, one wrong turn, one young man with a pistol on a street corner in Sarajevo. It's haunting, how fragile the threads of history really are, how one heartbeat, one decision, one act of defiance can shape the fate of nations. On that quiet morning in 1914, the world did not yet know it was standing at the edge of an abyss. But when Gavrilo Princip pulled the trigger, time itself seemed to fracture. And from that fracture, a century of blood and change was born. The world would remember it as the shot that shook the world, the assassination that started World War I.